All right, we are live and we are going live today because obviously we got the big news that the NBA is back. I think all of us, three of us, are extremely excited. I'm like elated. I don't think I've been this happy in quite some time, especially with sort of the status of everything in the world going on right now. But through sort of these difficult times, this is something that I think we can sort of look to optimism, not just because basketball is back, but I think this is something that we discussed months ago when the NBA shut down on that live stream that we did as what we call our sort of sports therapy. That sports kind of unites the world in a certain way, and I think that this is something that is bringing people together in a pretty difficult time. So I just wanted to start the live stream by saying that. But let's go ahead and get introduced here. I think everybody that's watching should probably know us, but obviously I'm Raj. I'm the host of Nuts and Bolts Association. Joe, why don't you go next?
Joe Cardoza, founder and CEO of Nuts and Bolts Sports.
And Jordan?
Jordan Mikauskas, just one of the NBA writers, just plugging along, and excited to be here and excited to have the NBA back.
Yeah, and thank you both for joining us, and thank you to everybody that's watching for joining us, whether you're watching us live or watching us later down the road. But yeah, we're going to talk about basically what's going down here with the NBA, what we're looking at when the NBA is set to return on July 31st. It's been shut down since March 11th because of the coronavirus, and we've been speculating now for months about what's going to happen. Are we going to see all the teams come back? Is the league even going to come back? How's it going to look when it comes back? And now we have some concrete evidence. We got reports earlier on in the week and in the past few weeks about what we're going to see, but this is sort of the firm okay from the Board of Governors who approved the vote from the proposal from the league. This is a 29-1 vote. Portland was reported to be the only team that said no. Interesting little point there. I saw Jordan, you tweeted out, please don't tell me it's the Knicks. And that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm sure Joe was thinking the same thing.
I would have bet my bank account it was the Knicks, but
yeah, I thought it was interesting that it was Portland just because they're on the fringe of sort of being in this that team that's right outside the playoff picture. But I just thought that was kind of funny that everybody sort of went straight to the Knicks, and that ended up not being the case. But like I just said, the season is going to resume on July 31st at Disney World. Most of the players are going to be sort of housed there on a campus style basis. They're going to be housed there. They're going to have all the eating and facilities and complexes for playing all there. So it's basically going to be a sort of bubble, more or less, for the players with limited contact to the outside world. But let's get into sort of the details of what this is going to look like, and then I'll talk to you guys a little bit about what your thoughts are on this and what maybe is working for you and what's not working for you. But we see 22 teams is what's going to end up being the final number. Like I said, we were talking about maybe could we see all 30 teams go in there. There's a possibility of maybe going straight into the playoffs with just the 16 teams that were already in contention. There's also talk about a group stage with 20 teams or a play-in tournament that way. But it ended up looking like the owners and the Board of Governors decided the 22 teams was the best route. And what this is going to look like, it's going to be the 8 teams that are currently in playoff seeding in the Eastern Conference: Milwaukee, Toronto, Boston, Miami, Indiana, Philly, Brooklyn, and Orlando. The 8 teams in the West that are in playoff contention: LA Lakers, LA Clippers, Denver, Utah, OKC, Houston, Dallas, Memphis. And then there's 6 additional teams. Now, these are basically the 6 teams with the next 6 best records. The way the NBA is wording it is it's the 6 teams that are 6 games outside the 8th seed, which to me is kind of confusing. But I guess that sort of went into the way that they established this 22-team format, how many teams actually have the potential to break into that 8th seed. So that's why we're seeing Portland, New Orleans, Sacramento, San Antonio, Phoenix, and Washington being the sole team in the East that falls into that bracket. A couple of us here on the stream are DC guys, so a little bit of DC basketball pride. I'm not a big Wizards fan, but it is what it is. But the way the games are going to be set up, we're going to have 8 regular season sort of seeding games, and we just got report right before we hopped onto this live stream that it's going to be a 16-day regular season, 5 to 6 games a day. So they're going to be pretty stacked days. Most of the teams are probably going to be playing at least one back-to-back in this regular season as well. Once that 8 regular season sort of seeding timeline is done, we're going to move into a play-in tournament. So that's going to be whether if the 8th seed and the 9th seed are close enough to where the 9th seed is only 4 games or less outside the playoff picture to get into that 8th seed. they're going to be a play-in tournament between those two teams, double elimination for the 8 seed, single elimination for the 9 seed. And once that is all done, we're going to have a traditional playoff format. This would go up until October 12th. A lot of moving pieces here. I understand that. But Joe, let me ask you first. Let me start with sort of the team aspect of it, and then we'll move into the game aspect of it. But with the 22 teams, is that something that you feel comfortable with seeing going into this?
Yeah, I am, because I mean, at the end of the day, the most important thing was safety first. So the less amount of people you have there, you kind of hope that obviously that's going to be able to contain the virus. And we see some numbers that are starting to go down. I know we were beaten over the head with flatten the curve. I like to think we've probably done that, or we're close to doing that by now. So less is more, in my opinion, when it comes to 22 teams. I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, Jordan.
I mean, can we just call this what this is? This is the NBA's push to get Zion in the playoffs in his rookie year. No, that's just a joke. But no, I mean, it's it's good. I mean, I know Portland was the reason they said no is because they wanted, I think, 20 teams instead of 22. So it wasn't like anything crazy. But I mean, it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see if New Orleans or Portland or anybody can catch Memphis for the 8 seed. And like Joe said, like we'll be able to still at least contain it in terms of being safe with everything. I'm sure they've thought of or are thinking of every precaution possible down there. So they'll make sure that everyone's safe. And I guess you guys get to see your Wizards play a couple more games.
Yeah, I agree with what both of you guys are saying, but to kind of discuss what Joe was saying about the sort of safety aspect of it and trying to reduce the number of players. That's why I kind of expected the sort of route straight into the playoffs to be just sort of the smartest thing to go about it. Because when you're adding 6 additional teams and you're considering 35 to 50 additional people per team between staff, players, personnel, training staff, whatever it may be, that's potential for 300 extra people when you add those 6 additional teams going down there to Orlando. And that, that's a significant increase, I think, in the odds of somebody possibly testing positive. So while I do like the side of it, where there are more teams, we're going to get a little bit of regular season. We're going to get more basketball, right? I'm not going to complain about that. The chance to see Dame try to get in there, Zion try to get in there. These guys who have potential, who could really make a fight at that 8 seed, especially in the West. I think that much of it is fun, but I don't know if you guys agree with me in that I am a bit scared because 22 does seem just a bit too high for me.
I'm not. I don't really see it that way. I think if it was going to be every single team of the NBA and they were going to finish the season according to the schedule, the way the schedule was written, that would have been a different story. So I think that would have been a really, really bad idea. I do see your point of going straight to the playoffs, but I think that the NBA is in a position right now where we are all starving for sports. And if you're an NBA fan, you're really starving for sports. So I think they saw a small opportunity to really feed that by saying, hey, let's have a couple more teams in. We'll have a round robin, a winner takes all scenario, which everybody loves no matter what sport you like. So I think they saw that as an opportunity to kind of do what MLB is not doing. MLB fumbling, stumbling at this opportunity. The NBA just figured we'll grab the bull by the horns and see what we can make happen.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, personally, I don't necessarily think we need all the other teams, like Portland and the Wizards and everything like that. I think, since nobody's within 3 games of an 8 seed in either conference, we could have just taken the top 16 and just, created some sort of 6 to 8 game schedule, just as a tune-up, because I definitely think we need that, to get these guys in playing against real competition again. But like Joe said, they definitely were more proactive and put together than what we're seeing with the MLB right now. So, the good thing, and I think their goal was just to get, some kind of plan, get teams down there and get basketball back. Cause like you guys said, we definitely need it. So, I personally would have gone with just 16, but if it's 22, if we get a couple more games as Zion and Dame and some other bigger names, they could make things interesting.
Yeah, I do agree with that, and I'm hoping that that sort of leeway that they have to prepare for this season is enough to get these players back in shape as well. Because like you guys just said, you want to make sure these guys are ready for play, because it's been so long since some of these guys have touched a basketball. Even some of these guys don't have hoops at their houses, so you are getting that sort of June 30th mini camp. I think in market is the way that Shams at the Athletic reported it, and then July 7th. So that after that first week of July, they're all going to fly down to Orlando and get a sort of on-site camp in Orlando, and then they're going to gear up for those games. Do you guys think that anybody, even though we are DC guys, like I said, I'm not a big DC fan, so I don't necessarily know if the Wizards have enough to push into that 8th seed, even if John Wall comes back. I don't know. But maybe in the West, or Joe, maybe you disagree with me, but like in the West, do you see anybody having possibly the potential to knock Memphis out with 8 games on the schedule?
I'll let Jordan start that off.
Seems like he's got some comments prepared. I mean, in the East, personally, I just don't think Washington can catch Orlando. I mean, we'll see what, again, what every team comes out like. We don't know what these guys have been doing and not doing and how they're going to respond to certainly a unique retraining camp of sorts. So we'll see how the East goes. As for the West, I think somebody posted the schedule today. New Orleans definitely has an easier 8 games just based on what their schedule was. Than even teams like Portland and Memphis are. So, like I said, this is the league's like low-key underrated push to get Zion in. There is a chance. We'll see though. There are a lot of young guys on that team. We'll see if they're able to kind of block out, because it's it's gonna be like a mental aspect too. You're playing in a neutral court. You're playing not with hardly any fans, maybe potentially family, but that's about it. Sure. And you're going to be in this Disney Wild World of sports. It's a very different environment from what they're used to, and everything will be different from waking up in the morning where they're at to all the way up to the game and after. So we'll see which teams come mentally prepared for that. I think Memphis has enough to hold on, but we'll let Joe see if he has any comments on the Wizards at all.
No, the Wizards don't have a chance.
Okay.
That's why I see Bradley Beal get a couple more 40-point games. I mean, I'm a Wizards fan. I hope I'm wrong. Nothing makes me happier than to have another live stream talking about how the Wizards snuck in and got the 8th seed. What I saw before the shutdown of the season, I don't see it happening. I think the East stays where it's at. I think in the West, I agree with Jordan. I definitely think the NBA was like, what can we do to make sure that Zion at least has a shot to get into this thing?
And JJ Redick never missed the playoffs.
Yeah, JJ Redick. Yeah,
it continues. I think in the West, I like New Orleans' chance to make it. I think that they had a groove going on with Lonzo Ball, Zion, Brandon Ingram, JJ Redick. It all depends, like Jordan was saying, is how fast. It's 2 things. How fast can you adapt to this new environment? And what kind of shape are you in? Like, I mean, a lot of these guys, like Daraj said, don't have basketball hoops at home, which I don't really understand, but whatever. Separation of work and home, I guess. But how fast can you adapt to the new environment? How much shape can you get into during the 8-game season that they're going to have? Or how in shape are you right now to see if they can pull off a run? But in the West, I like the New Orleans Pelicans' chance. In the East, you might have seeding positions change, but there's no team in the East that's out of the playoffs that's going to sneak in. No, I don't see that.
Yeah, I guess it really does factor down to the way that the games are laid out, right, and the schedule is laid out, because we don't necessarily have confirmation on what that's going to look like. I think, Jordan, I know what you're referencing, in that there was somebody who said on Twitter yesterday that the games are going to be broken down based off the remaining games in the schedule, and they were going to kind of continue those games as is and then skip over the teams that are no longer there. I haven't seen actual confirmation on that, so I would be interested to see if that's the route that the league goes down. I would imagine that they're going to try to reschedule some of these games, obviously not with the teams that are not there, but with all the teams that are there. I think they're going to try to reformat, and that's a difficult task, I think, for the league. We have to consider how many times have these teams already played. Is it fair to have New Orleans end up playing one of the LA teams like 6 times in one season? Is that really fair? No, it's not. But I guess considering the circumstances, that might be what they have to do. Because New Orleans, I know leading up to the sort of shutdown and the suspension of the season, New Orleans, they were talking about how New Orleans had the easiest schedule for the rest of the season based on all these other teams that were fighting for playoff spots. And it's about like Zion getting in there. They had just started rolling. Zion had played 10 to 12 games, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a little bit more than that. Right. So he had, he hadn't really had that much under his belt, but they were still finding a groove just because, behind his leadership, behind Drew Holiday being a really solid factor there. And JJ Redick bringing a little bit of that veteran experience, which kind of disappears in the playoffs, if we're being completely honest. But they did seem to be making a run for that. I guess if I had to make a choice as to like who I think might sneak in there, I just feel like Dame still kind of has the hot hand this season. Like, I know he's not dropping 50 on teams like he was for however many games it was in a row that he did that. But I just feel like Dame has been so strong this year, and he's one of my favorite players. And like, I think I even talked about it at the All-Star break. Like, I didn't necessarily know if he deserved to get into the All-Star team just because his team wasn't performing well, but that's not to discount what he's done. And now he's really picked up the slack, and they are back in contention. And, they've got the playoff experience. Last year, they went to the West Finals. they made a lot of those series competitive, and they're a very strong team. They're an experienced team. They're getting Nurkic back, I would imagine, because he was supposed to come back like March 15th, so 4 days after the season shut down. He was supposed to come back in. I would see that team probably having the strongest chance. That said, I want to see Memphis get in there. I'm a Jaren Jackson fan. I'm a really big fan of his, and Ja has just been incredible this season. Just like his rookie game is just incredible. I just love seeing what he's doing. So that I think if I had to pick somebody that I would love to see in there, it would be Memphis. But let's get into sort of the game structure of it also, like the 8 regular season games, the play-in tournament, and the traditional playoff style, so that we're not seeing the sort of reseeding of conferences and whatnot in the playoffs. Jordan, let me toss it to you first. What are your thoughts on all 3 factors here?
Yeah, in terms of the playoffs, I mean, I wish they would kind of just keep it pretty simple. I feel like we're already working, they're already working overtime to try and schedule everything with this relative to the location and the regular season games and everything. So in terms of like the playoff stuff, like, I mean, it's tough. The only part where I would consider like some sort of change with it would be giving some sort of advantage to the home court teams. I know that's been like the thing that's been talked about over the last couple of days. But a lot of the suggestions thrown out that we saw on ESPN were pretty ridiculous, like giving somebody 7 fouls and even like choosing where you want to stay in a hotel. Like that's not really going to matter. So like some of those were pretty ridiculous. I think the one was giving the home teams maybe an extra possession or 2. Which could be very pivotal if you have like a Bucks Lakers or Lakers Clippers or something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
But the one idea that I also saw floated around that I would be interested in would be like letting the top seeds pick their opponents, because I think that's like the closest you're going to come to the home court. I don't necessarily need them to be reseeded each round, but if you had like the Lakers in the first round, they're like, I don't really feel like, do we want to deal with Jaren Jackson? Or do we want to deal with just taking Dallas and trying to, if we take out Luka, then we can just deal with Porzingis and everybody else. So I think that would be an avenue I'd rather see. But I mean, whatever they choose to do, I think the important thing to note is whatever they decide to do this year might be like a sort of test run for what they want to do in the future. I know there's always been talks of changing the playoff format. So I think whatever you see from this specific season might be kind of the foundation for what they might be doing forward, along with obviously some regular season changes.
Sure. Joe, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like the NBA, like Jordan just said, has been talking about changing the format. I know Adam Silver's been pushing it for a long time on possibly getting the format changed for the playoffs. So I think whatever they do, if I'm Adam Silver and I'm the league, if there's a certain kind of change you want to do, whether it be reseeding every round, let's push for that change to be used this time around. So we can say, hey, look, it was a pandemic, but we tried this experiment. It worked. Let's use this moving forward. And I think that home court and advantage in the NBA is pretty important. I'm not really sure how they're going to pull that off. I mean, just like you guys, I read some of the ridiculous stuff that was online. I even heard one about bringing your home parquet floor to Florida so you can play on that. I don't know how that's going to make St. Louis any better, looking down and knowing that's the floor he always plays on. Don't think that's going to be a factor. But I think that if they're going to make a change for the playoffs, they're going to try to use a new system. I would push to use a system that I want to try to use moving forward, not just a one-time deal. I think it's a waste to do a one-time deal.
The one thing I did see, real quick, I did see like one person floated around. I think it got said on like a Bill Simmons podcast too, was, and this would be more specific just because of this situation in Orlando, is the home teams would get like, they'd essentially be like a sound advisor. And what they would do is, for like their lineup introductions, and then for like when say the Lakers were the home team, if they're on offense, they're getting some crowd cheering, and then when they score, they pump in that crowd noise. Or when the Lakers are on defense, that they'd pump in the defense chants, just to give a little something of an authentic feel. Obviously, it's not going to replace being in an actual arena with your fans, but it would be something interesting to see, like how that momentum, how that would affect like their psyche on the court, because they're kind of conditioned to hear for those things, to hear the cheering when they score, to hear the defense when there's 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter and they need to stop. So that idea I think would be interesting. Obviously, it wouldn't carry over into other seasons because hopefully everyone will be back in their arenas next year. But just another something interesting that I heard floating around too.
I think that's something that soccer has been doing, professional soccer. And I'm not the biggest watcher of soccer, but my brother is. So I've kind of sat down and watched some of these games in anticipation of what the NBA might look like just to get an idea of it. And it actually doesn't feel that like illegitimate or unnatural. It feels pretty normal, if I'm being completely honest with you. You know, the way the cameras are angled and whatnot. You're seeing a couple of empty rows in the stands, but it's not all that jarring, and the sound itself is actually kind of natural. I guess it's just sort of that instinct, right, of us being sports fans, that we're just so used to having that background noise, whether it be the chanting or the loudspeakers or whatever it may be. There's always that noise going on, and it just sort of it just clicked. It just clicked. Something about it clicked, and I would like to see the NBA do that. To go to the point about like the experimentation, I'm actually surprised that they're not like going the route of experimentation, because like in their press release they said we're going traditional playoffs, four rounds, best of 7 series, so no reseeding of conferences. It's East and West. So I'm actually really surprised, because yeah, Joe, you said it. Adam Silver is the kind of guy who not only has experimented with things in the past, but it wants to continue to experiment, has talked about reformatting the playoffs, and this was his opportunity to do it. Like, you know, you don't have to worry about travel. You don't have to worry about Boston going to LA and playing 7 series game in the first round. Like that's just not going to happen on a regular travel basis. But this was your chance to try it out and see how it looked, and that could have given some of these home court teams the advantage that they're looking for, and that I'm sure the Lakers would have loved to play a team like Orlando in the first round, as opposed to seeing Ja and Jaren in the first round. Like that just sounds so much more logical to me, and I'm pretty confused by it, if I'm being completely honest. That was the thing that shocked me the most of all of this, even more so than the 22 team aspect of it. Do either of you have any thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I was surprised as well. I figured this was his shot right here. I was under the impression it was a done deal, to be honest with you. So when I saw that it wasn't a done deal, I was like, man.
Yeah. It just seemed like a logical choice.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I mean, I think if I was, you know, commissioner or whatever, and I was getting to choose, I've been in favor for years of just having the best 16 like records, like regardless of conference. Like I'm tired of seeing 38-44, like Detroit playing the first round. Like it's no wonder LeBron swept all those teams in the first round over the years, playing some scrubs. But like I think it would be fun moving forward to take those, you know, the best 16 or whatever how many teams they want, based, you know, nothing based on conference, just all record. And then, you know, just if you, like I said, you can piggyback off the idea of like getting to choose your opponent, or at least at that point, you know, you have at least some sort of set order, and you're not having an imbalance between the conferences and between the level of competition of games in the playoffs. But like I said, I'd be interested to see, because there's so many storylines that would happen if you had teams, you know, all of a sudden picking their opponents. Like if the Lakers, you know, were like, oh, we don't want to play, you know, Houston in the second round, we want to play this team, and then Westbrook and Harden get pissed off and they go out and destroy their second round opponent because they're motivated. Yeah. Or the team that does get picked, you know, if the Lakers are like, oh, we want to play, you know, Dallas, and then they take that as a slight, like, oh, they think that we're a pushover, and they come out and they play with new energy. So there's a whole like mind game element to it. It's kind of why I wish they televised the All-Star draft, because I would love to see the egos of those guys take a little hit. You know, when LeBron doesn't pick, you know, Kyrie first or something like that, or we see like who the last pick is. Like nobody wants to be the last pick on the playground. Like I would love to see all that stuff televised. I know they try to hush it out because they don't want to hurt these guys' egos, but I'm all for it.
I think it would just make everything more interesting, because I mean, these guys, you know, it's sort of a trend right on Twitter and whatnot, like, you know, so petty NBA, like these guys, they like to be petty. They like to have sort of that speculation around them, and sort of like to light the fire and whatnot, not just under their like teammates, but around each other as well. And I just think that would make so much more sense to me, just because it would make a more competitive edge of it all.
Can you imagine like the Sixers, like, you know, say they get picked by, you know, the Bucks to play in the second round because the Bucks think that they're a better matchup for the Sixers, and that they're, you know, they can, you know, work around Embiid or whatever. And then imagine like Embiid going right on Twitter and just firing off like 3 tweets. Like it'd be ridiculous, but it would be It would just add to that already like 24/7 news cycle that we have with the NBA, and I don't see how that's a negative in any way.
No, I agree 100%. Yeah, it's all better for the marketing, and even more so for the All-Star game aspect of it. I know it's a little bit outside what we're talking about here, but I agree 100%. I think if you like, those guys are All-Stars. Their ego should not be hurt by being picked last amongst like the top 14, 18 players in the league, whatever it may be. Like, you should not be hurt by that. So I wish they would do that for the All-Star game. Maybe use that as an experimentation thing for this now in the future. But I also wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the play-in tournament a little bit more, because that is the one sort of aspect of this that is being experimented with. So like, what are your thoughts on the fact that, like, this kind of goes back to what you guys are talking about, that this is just maybe paving another way for Zion to sort of sneak his way into the playoffs. Does that seem like all this really is to you guys?
It does to me. Yeah. I'm not mad about it, but it does to me.
Yeah, it definitely seems like they're, again, this is we'll look back 20 years from now, and if the Pelicans get in, we'll be like, okay, well, we know that the NBA tried to push to make that happen. But the idea itself, like the general idea, even if they do it moving forward, of if the team's within, I think it's 4 games or 3 games of the 8 seed, they do that play-in thing. And correct me if I'm wrong, they have to, the team that is the higher seed, the 9 seed, has to win 2 games before the 8 seed wins 1.
Correct. Yeah. Double elimination for the 8 seed. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And that's actually how we used to do it, like playing Little League. I remember we made to the title game one year through the playoffs, and the team was undefeated. We had to beat them twice before they won once. So it was like an interesting aspect, because it puts that 9 seed, it gives them that hope that there's still a chance you can get in the playoffs, but also there's that, hey, your back's against the wall, you have to play almost perfect, because anybody has a bad, one bad game and you're really done there. And it adds to that drama too. I think we saw it with Denver and Minnesota was the last time we kind of had a winner take all situation for a playoff spot 2 years ago. Yeah. And that was cool. It was like, oh, okay, wow, one game, 48 minutes, let's see who steps up, let's see who kind of chokes. And then, the winner gets to go on to the playoffs, the loser goes home knowing that they were really close. So that aspect of it is cool. However, like I said, I agree with you guys. This is definitely the NBA is like, we're going to give the Pelicans a shot. Like, if they screw it up, they screwed up, but we're going to give them every opportunity. And I'd be curious to see who their officials are for all their games too.
Yeah, right. That's what we got to go for nuts and bolts next. That's the next piece you got to write, Jordan, is to go back in time, see some of these refs that have favored New Orleans, and go and sort of shape something around that, because I feel like that would work really well.
I'd love to see who's refereed their wins and losses for sure.
Yeah, exactly. But somebody that I could see really thriving in that format and in that environment is Damian Lillard, like him being the 9 seed right now. If he goes into Memphis, a team that doesn't have a lot of playoff experience, a younger team, and he has to win 2 games against them, I could see him going up against Memphis in that first game and really, really showing up and dropping 50 like we were just talking about, and stealing a game off of them and making that thing really competitive. I really want to see that. I think that would just be really exciting. And I'm not the biggest fan, I guess, of this play-in tournament style. I don't know if it's really the smartest way for the league to go in the future, but I think it's like we're saying here, like we keep repeating, for them to experiment with something is better than to not experiment with anything. So that part I'm excited about.
And if you did get Portland there too, let's just say it pans out. Let's say Portland and Memphis, Portland stays within the 3 or 4 game threshold, and they have that play-in scenario. I think you're right. I think it would potentially favor Portland, because you have Dame and CJ and Nurkic. These guys have been through a lot of playoff battles together, and they can kind of adapt to anything. Whereas Memphis is obviously this very raw and young but talented team. But also, like, how would they match up? Who's going to guard Dame? Like, Morant's, capable, but he's not any kind of superior defender yet. McCollum is sneaky. He can get you 25 to 30 if you're not covering him coming off screens. And then Nurkic is big enough to bang with Valanciunas down low. Jaren Jackson would, like you said, would kind of be the wild card there, because I don't think they really have anybody that could truly match up with him now that Harkless and Aminu are gone. But it would be interesting that, would Portland be able to kind of overcome, and be perfect there for 2 games before Memphis could be for 1.
Yeah, I'm expecting we have a lot of stuff to cover on that front once the season really gets started here on Nuts and Bolts. Joe, did you have any thoughts on that? Look like you were about to speak.
Yeah, no, I was going to say is Portland too is in a pretty good position, because, like we said, they're getting healthy. You're getting Nurkic back. We all forget that I think it was the first game or second game of the season you lost Zach Collins. That's another capable big coming back. And if there's any team, like Raj was a good point, if there's any team that can come together that's probably been practicing their butts off behind the scenes, social distancing, all that good stuff, in the West, I'd say it's probably the Lakers and Portland. So I can see, you figure with McCollum and Lillard, you got your scoring right there. Those 2 guys can go 30 points every night. If Nurkic can just give you 10 points, a couple rebounds, you see an improvement from Zach Collins plus the other pieces they have there, I can see Portland making a push. Because Collins is supposed to be the replacement this season. And like I said, 2 games into the season, he's lost for what we thought was for the whole year. Now you get a chance to get him back in the lineup. It's all about how fast he can get acclimated back into the swing of things.
I hope that is something that can happen, because I just feel like, with that, again, like Zion, he's gonna have his shot. He's gonna have his shot, but like this is Dame's prime, and he needs to take advantage of it. And if he doesn't show up here, this could very much hurt his legacy. I know this season kind of has a bit of an asterisk on it. We've talked about that a lot. We've talked it to death, basically, I think, amongst basketball fans in general. But I just think that this season very much could hurt Dame's legacy if he misses the playoffs entirely. If in his prime, for him to be having the season that he's having, if he doesn't make the playoffs, I just think that could be hurtful for his career. But let's kind of get into the closing parts of this discussion now. And I asked you guys a little bit about this up top, but do you have any sort of overarching health concerns at all? Like the parks, I think that the players are going to be more or less sectioned off, and they're, like I said, they're going to have limited contact with the outside environment. But the parks are going to be opening pretty soon. I think it's going to be sort of like a gradual opening. They're obviously not going to be at full capacity, but that's still a lot of people tracking in on who knows what into that space. And while they might not be interacting with the players in the places that the players will be playing, there is still the potential of something spreading. And, if somebody tests positive, I think Adam Silver himself has said that he's not going to be stopping games. It's just going to be, that's your luck. If LeBron tests positive, and knock on wood, he doesn't, like, I definitely don't want that to happen. But, sucks for the Lakers. Sucks for the Lakers. Hey, man, I'm a massive LeBron fan, being a Cavs guy, but like, yeah, but like, I would hate to see that, but like, that's just sort of the luck of the draw here. Are there any concerns on that front for either of you guys?
There's no strip clubs in Disney World, right? All right, so Harden should be good. Harden should be good for now. All jokes aside, they'll be fine. Like I said, I'm sure, along with everything with the schedule and the playoffs and everything, I mean, I'm sure they've got a committee working around the clock to think of like every possible negative scenario that could occur. I think we saw in the report that they're going to let them, still eat at restaurants and stuff and still play golf. I mean, those guys need to get out, and they can't just be hunkered down inside these, hotels and apartments and whatnot. I mean, it'd be too much. Nobody could deal with that, really. We've been trying to deal with it for 2 months, and I think we've all gone a little bit crazy at times. So as long as they keep them contained from like the rest of the park, though, like just section off a huge part, make it NBA only. Like, you got to have a badge or pass to get in. And as long as everyone's around each other and they're getting tested every day, and you have these, all these doctors and nurses and trainers and everybody, they should be able to keep everybody healthy. And I agree. If somebody does get, tested positive or anything like that, just try and quarantine them and get them healthy as soon as possible. But you can't shut it down for one person. If it was like 50 all of a sudden, okay. But if you have like one per team or one per every other team gets it throughout the entire 2.5 months that they're there, that's just what's going to happen.
Yeah, I feel like it's only a matter of time. We know it's going to happen. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I won't be. If I'm wrong, I'm not going to be mad about that at all. But I think it's only a matter of time before somebody from a team tests positive. It's just the law of averages. And like Jordan was saying, I think the NFL right now has played through every possible scenario as far as, okay, let's say 2 guys get it. What do we do? Okay, they're in quarantine. What's the quarantine process look like? What do we do for the rest of that person's teammates? Now my question is that team allowed to bring somebody off the streets to take that person's place, or are you just short? Because if you're bringing somebody from off the street, now we're introducing another person into this protected bubble environment. That's something I'm interested to see how they do as well. I mean, it sounds weird saying it, but I mean, it's also another part of the interesting part of the whole scenario of the bubble and keeping everything under wraps and trying to get this NBA season to end. Because I mean, we're looking at July being like one of the greatest sports months ever, with the amount of NBA you're going to have and other sports that are coming back slow. I mean, I know for myself, those 5-6 game days, I'll be watching all 6 games back to back to back without a problem at all. And I want to see good basketball. I know it's going to probably take 8 games. I'd say maybe 4 or 5 games before guys really start getting into the groove. And again, like I said before, it's all about what kind of shape you're in. If you've been sitting around like we've been, Netflixing it up and snacking, might take you all 8 games. If you've been working out and working on your craft during this time, it might not take you 8 games to get in shape. That's going to be the biggest key. How fast can you adapt to the environment, the no fans, limited family, and how fast can you get your body in shape?
Jordan, look like you're about to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, can they should just have, like, to your point of, like, if somebody tests positive or somebody gets hurt, I don't know if they've talked a lot about having, like, an extended roster, even if it's just by 1 or 2 spots. They have because they obviously have like G League teams, so if they have some of those guys at least available, it would be funny though to just have like J.R. Smith on another court, just like shooting around and like something, say like Caruso, God forbid, gets sick or hurt, and LeBron just like looks over the other court. He's like, "JR, you're in. Come on over."
You said it. No strip clubs at Disney World, so JR's not going to show up there.
Idea to have a free agent pool like quarantine with them. I don't know what that number is. I mean, is it like 3 guards, 3 forwards, and 3 centers? If center even exists in the NBA anymore, but I think
we've all played pickup. You just have the dudes on the other court shooting around, and if something happens, like, "Hey, you're in." Like, New Jersey, like.
That is something that some of these reports have stated, right? I believe that there is going to be a little bit of flexibility with the roster, but we haven't actually gotten any confirmation as to what that's going to look like. That's the thing here is like even with this much detail that we have in front of us right now, there's still a lot of things that are a little bit sort of up in the air. The league is finalizing. They have the call with the players union tomorrow, I believe it is, and they have to confirm everything with Disney World as well before everything can be 100% locked in and ready to go. So there are so many moving factors, and I'm sure, Woj will be dropping his bombs here. Like, in the next couple of days, we'll be getting, we've been getting information throughout this entire day, sort of new details spilling out here. We just got news that the G League is canceled for the rest of the season, which I don't think surprises anybody, but, the details are still slowly starting to roll out. So we'll get a little bit more hard details on that probably in the days to come. Let's close things out with just a couple of other additional dates that I wanted to touch on. This is a little bit outside of this season, but it is, sort of setting the stage for maybe things that we could see in the future, not just with the season that is to come, but maybe future seasons to come. So just a couple important dates that came out of some of these reports. August 25th is the new date for the draft lottery. The draft is going to be right after the season ends. October 12th is the last date. If the finals go to Game 7, it'll be October 12th. The draft is October 15th. Free agency just a couple days after that, October 18th. And then looking to next season, the camps are predicted to begin on November 10th, with the season tipping off on December 1st. And the reason I kind of want to touch on this, I would love for you guys to touch on the draft and free agency as well. But obviously the one thing that stands out to me is next season. And this is, again, going back to the experimentation, something that the Adam Silver himself has talked about, the possibility of pushing the start of the season into December and, letting the season run until August or September, whatever it may be. And this, this could be another sort of experimentation thing that they could be doing here with that and seeing how it works out. It's a little bit like the lockout season, how we started in December, but I imagine this is going to be a full season for next year. I can't see them really shortening it all that much. Is there anything from these dates that jumps out to you? Joe, we'll start with you.
I would just say the October 15th NBA draft. I mean, if you're whoever the teams are that are going to be in the conference finals, the NBA finals, having that time to really scout those players. I mean, I know you can sit there and say, well, that's what you pay your scouting department for. Easier said than done, in my opinion. So, I mean, just finding that balance of, hey, we got Game 5 of the finals tomorrow, but at the same time, what's our draft board looking like? And then also, too, being somebody, I mean, you said August 25th is the lottery. That short amount of time. Okay, we know we got number 3. Now let's put together our board, really do a deep dive on these players so we can make the best possible pick. I think that's going to be, we're going to find out whose front office really has some chops and when it comes to that. And then also the turnaround for the players. I mean, with the season starting up November 10th with camps, it's like you won the championship, the parades the next day. See you next week at the gym. I mean, I'm for it as a fan, but as a professional athlete, that's a pretty tall order.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. For a while before these reports started coming out, it seemed like they were angling to do it around Christmas, which would make sense because they already play a couple games on Christmas, and it would be their day to kind of unleash everything while giving some proper time of rest between the end of the season and the beginning. But this definitely puts them a little bit in a time crunch. It's weird because it's almost like a reverse lockout. Like normally when we've had lockouts in like 2012 and then 1999. You don't have these guys playing for, an extended period of time, and everyone comes in like super out of shape, and it's like a rush schedule to play everything. Here, it's like you get a little bit of that reverse. Like Joe was saying, you have teams that are going to be in the conference finals and the finals. So, teams like potentially the Bucks, the Lakers, the Clippers that are going to, be competing that far in. And then they do have a short turnaround time where they have to, rest their bodies, try and enjoy a little bit of the celebration for the Lakers when they win. And then, to get right back into it. With training camps only a couple weeks later. And you have guys, you have older veterans like LeBron James, who's like 35, 36 years old. Like, what does that turnaround time look like for him? He's coming off of an extended rest period over the last 2 years. So it'll be interesting to see like what that's like. I like how the draft and free agency are almost on the same day. It would be fun to see, like once the draft, happens, these guys know who their young players are. And now you have a even quicker turnaround time to, hey, what does our cap space look like? Because there's always draft day trades. So what does our cap space look like? What do we have moving forward? What are our pieces? And then you got a quick, turn around and get your best pitch together for, free agent X or whoever that is. I think that'll be kind of fun to see that happen instead of like having the draft and then we're still excited, but we sit there for like another 8, 9, 10 days waiting for it. Here it's like it's a weekend and it starts.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. I would have liked to see the season push back a little bit more, like I said, maybe towards Christmas, but overall, it should be good. And yes, Ashmere, you can have the Warriors competing again next year, potentially.
James me to say it, but we need to enjoy the demise of the Warriors while we can. Because something tells me, top 3 draft picks coming on deck. Klay Thompson, all those guys back healthy. God.
Thankfully, this is like the worst draft in like a decade. Otherwise, I would be way more worried. But like the best potential player for the Warriors is like James Wiseman, who is like pretty lazy from what everyone says. So thankfully, they're I'm not too worried. But healthy Stephen Klay next year is obviously going to make a world of difference.
If you're a rookie for the Dubs next year, though, you got nothing that you have all the time in the world to get acclimated because you have 3 All-Stars in your team. You guys have won multiple championships. I mean, you could just chill, figure out the lay of the land. We're forgetting all about Andrew Wiggins. Like, as much as a hater,
I put Wiggins far from my mind. Trust me.
I'm a Dubs hater, but I'm also a realist. They have a chance to go from zeros to heroes pretty quickly, depending on where they. I think it's almost a lock they'll be top 5 at least. But like you said, the draft class is kind of weak. If they're not number 1, where do they go?
Yeah, well, Joe, you just made the point, Joe, that we're going to see how good some of these front offices is. I think Golden State does have one of the best front offices in the league, and if they don't see something they could do with that pick, they have Stephen Klay. They could get rid of that pick, get somebody else with that pick, especially if it's a top 3 pick. They could get somebody they've been going after for quite a bit of time now and make something out of it. I wouldn't doubt that at all happening.
Yeah, as much as I don't like that team, I gotta admit, I see the writing on the wall.
Yeah. The teams that are going to excel are going to be like the Warriors. And the Bucks have done a good job building, and some other teams. And then they're next. Then you're gonna see the more, not even really the Cavs. You're gonna see the Knicks and the Wizards and some of these other teams are just like they already kind of struggle with this stuff, and now you put a clock on it, like put the speed mode. Like James Dolan in that front office, like with a clock, it's just like I feel so bad. It's gonna be terrible. They're gonna panic trade somebody on draft night, and next thing you know, they're gonna take some guy from the old Yugoslavia that's not any good, and then they're gonna piss away their cap money. Instead of 6 power forwards, they're gonna have the cap space and they'll go get like 5 shooting guards. Like they're just. I know I'm being harsh, but that's just what it's going to be.
I don't think you're that far off.
Yeah.
You're not that far off, brother.
Yeah. I don't disagree with what you're saying at all. As harsh as it may be, I mean, we opened this episode off by saying that we thought we all assumed that the Knicks were the one team that voted against this entire thing, and that's just kind of the stigma that they have attached to them. But I think that's a good place to end this conversation and end this sort of discussion about the league rebooting itself here in the coming months. I think we're going to have a lot of stuff to discuss here, in the next few weeks as we gear up for the season. I'm sure we're going to be doing plenty more live broadcasts as well as the league or as the start of the season approaches. So look out for those. But let's kind of close things out here. And Joe, as the founder of Nuts and Bolts Sports, you want to let people know where we can find you as well as the site and everything online as well?
Well, you can find the site at nutsandboltsports.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Nuts and Bolts SP, and you can also find us on YouTube. We're on all social media platforms, Instagram. If you're crazy, you can follow me at Joe Cardoza 301. And I'm excited, man. I mean, one thing I'll say to end this is Washington Wizards. Why not us? Why not now?
Yeah. Jordan, any closing thoughts?
Well, you can find me on Twitter with my handle there at Lower Marion 33. Thankfully, like Joe, I don't have to worry about sweating for my team making the playoffs. The Lakers are pretty locked in, but I am ready for playoff time. I'm gonna go buy a bottle of champagne this weekend. Keep it stored. Nothing premature. I'm just gonna keep it stored in the basement. And if the basketball gods, play it in our favor, I'll be dousing myself come October, 10th, 11th, and 12th. But just excited to have everything back and looking forward to getting back to somewhat of a sense of normalcy.
Yeah, I think I'm sweating less than both you guys because my calves are nowhere near this picture, and I'm okay with that. If I don't have to dedicate time to watch my Cavs play, and I can dedicate some time to the Clippers and the Lakers, I'm okay with that because I'd rather watch some good basketball. If I'm being completely honest.
I was surprised when we talked about the 22-team playoffs, and you started talking about the different changes and what you liked. I'm surprised you didn't advocate for a 29-team playoff.
It's tough. It's tough when you're sitting there on like a Tuesday night, right, or like on a Thursday night TNT game. There's 2 highlight TNT games. Dallas might be playing, LA might be playing, and like on League Pass, there's that one game every single Thursday night, and it's the Cavs versus the Spurs or something. And I'm just like, I guess I got to tune in for this and miss Luka dominating. But yeah, like I said, we have plenty of content that we're sort of planning as the season approaches. So keep an eye on Nuts and Bolts Sports, and we will be back next time. Thank you both for joining me.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for asking me for running things.